Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the 6th edition of Diplomacy Talks, where we talk with the ambassadors about the situation in their countries, in our country, in the world, and about the relations between the two countries. Now I have a very great honor to welcome His Excellency Carlos Isauro Félix Corona. Okay, I remembered all full names, and he's the new ambassador of Mexico. It's one of the friendliest countries that we have in the world, and I will start with that. Yugoslavia and Mexico were extremely friendly in the past, and even Serbia and Mexico were also very close prior to the World War I, when Serbia existed until the 1918 as an independent country. These excellent relations have been transferred from Serbia to Yugoslavia, from Yugoslavia to Serbia once again. And how do you rate the relations between the two countries?
Well, first of all, thank you very much for the opportunity to share with you some of very interesting topics. I think that congratulations, you're making a very good job. With the ambassadors, we really appreciate the opportunity to share with some people what are the situation between the bilateral relationship with our countries and Serbia, but as well to try to make some comments about other issues that are important right now. Of course, one of those is the pandemic. Well, regarding your question, I think that it's very important to remember that this year we are celebrating 75 years of uninterrupted diplomatic relationship between Mexico and Serbia, that of course we started, as you mentioned, with Yugoslavia. On a personal note, I think that I mentioned already to some of our friends, but this is my second time in Belgrade. I was during 1991 to 1994 in a very complicated moment of the historical events that happened here in the region. And when I said uninterrupted diplomatic relationship, is because at that time, when this crisis in the Balkans happened, many countries suspended the relationship, the official contacts with at that time Yugoslavia. Many others even they broke relationships with the government of Yugoslavia, and unfortunately many embassies left Belgrade at that time. I had the privilege to talk with my government. I was chargé d'affaires at that time because at that moment the sanctions against Yugoslavia ordered that all the ambassadors will be out of Belgrade. So we were only chargé d'affaires at that time. And I had different consultations with my government, and they asked me about the convenience or not to close the embassy because of the war situation. Basically, the concern of my country was the safety of our people here in Belgrade at that time. There were, as I said, very complicated conditions, but fortunately, I managed to convince them in a way that we could not close the embassy. So mainly there were, of course, reasons, political, internal reasons of Mexico to be here in this region, observing this historical process, but as well the strong relationship that we had with Yugoslavia, with the people of Serbia at that time. And we considered that we should continue in the very bad times that we had at that time. So good friends are for good times and bad times. And if we had closed our embassy at that time, it would be an historical memory of how we reacted in those moments. So when I emphasize this, I think it's important to know that Mexico has always been a very truly friend of the Serbian people. And I would say that today, well, we are in another stage where basically all the ex-Yugoslav republics are independent. I feel that there is still a very strong interest in the friendship of Mexico with Serbia and the Serbian people. During my only 4 months here, I had the chance to meet with 5 ministers. I spoke with the minister, of course, Prime Minister Ana Parnavich, that she told me about the importance of the relationship. When I presented my credentials to President Vučić, he mentioned something quite interesting, because we had a conversation, a very interesting conversation, but in some point he said that Serbia should take care about other friends that are not traditional in the region, because of course the dynamics are focused on the countries that are on the region. But sometimes there are other countries that are not so present in the mind of the Serbian people that have been truly friends of Serbia. And with that in mind, well, I had conversations with the Minister of Defense, the Minister of Youth and Sports, the Minister of Commerce, Tourism and Telecommunications. I had a conversation with the Speaker of the National Assembly and with the parliamentarian of French group between Mexico and Serbia, considering as well that the parliamentary diplomacy is very important. So in short, I would say that I feel that this is still this interest of maintain a very good relationship in continuation of what we had built in the past. So I think that that strong link of very, very high level of diplomatic contacts. Mariscal Tito was twice in Mexico. There were 4 presidents of Mexico who came to Belgrade. And in spite that we were not part of the non-aligned movement, we were observers. It was a very strong political dialogue that we had at that time. So in short, I would say that I perceive, and I'm very glad that there is the interest of the Serbian government and from many other entities as well, in order to start a new stage of our bilateral relationship that I think is very important for both countries.
I would emphasize the common history in a way. We had a parallel history. You had a great empire during the Middle Ages. We had a great empire. And then the colonial power came. In your case, it was Spanish Empire. In our case, it was Ottoman Empire. So approximately in the beginning of the 19th century, we started an anti-colonial fight. So we had pretty much the same history. And out of that anti-colonial fight and struggle, we managed to make new country that is resembling the old, but it's a mixture between the colonial past and the pre-colonial past of the country. So I think that the people don't think that much about the similarities in history and in mentality between the two people. They think, oh, they're far away. I mean, they're just another country in the American continent, but it's striking similarity between the histories of Serbia and Mexico. And I would like our listeners to hear that from me. And thank you for your opinion. And I would like to continue with this kind of talks about cooperation. And this time I would like to emphasize the economic cooperation, how much Serbian companies collaborate with the Mexican ones, and what more our economic cooperation may offer, and how can it be enhanced in the future?
Well, this is a very important question. I think I would say that basically our links have 2 pillars, very strong pillars. One, the high political dialogue that we develop, as I said, at the highest level. And the other is a strong academic and cultural exchanges. But in terms of the economic links, we have not really take advantage of the potential that both economies have. In the case of Mexico, well, we have the 15th largest economy in the world. As you know, we are part of more than 40 different free trade agreements. I think that later we can elaborate a little bit more about this. But the potential of the Mexican economy, I think that has not really perceived in the economy and the many people that are related to the economic activity, not just the private sector, not just the public enterprises of Serbia, but many others that they have the opportunity to make business with Mexico. And I think that this is extremely important because we need to start a new stage of collaboration. We need to expand our bilateral links. On the 31st of May, the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Mexico, Marcelo Ebrard, had a video conference with Nicolas Selakovic, his counterpart, and when they congratulate themselves about the excellent relationship that we have, they agree precisely to work more on the economic side of the relationship. We think that there is a lot of potential still. We need to understand that in this globalized economy of the 21st century, it's not just the bilateral trade importance that we need to enhance, but it's how you can participate in the global value chains around the world and how you can engage precisely in those global value chains that are moving around the world, because it's the structure of the 21st economy. And as you know, well, because of that, there are different economic blocks that have been built during the past 15, 20 years that reflects precisely this global economic structure. So in that sense, I think that, of course, the economy of Serbia is growing. It's in a transition from a previous central planified economy for a more open market economy. But I could say that there is still a lot of potential in that. The situation is that we need to work together. I had this conversation with Tatiana Matic, the Minister of Economic and Trade and Telecommunications, and we agreed that we need to have some kind of diagnosis in which are the sectors that we have potential in order to enhance not just the commercial trade, but as well investment. I think that we need to focus more on investment in this new stage of our relationship. And many Mexican companies, they are having some interest, not just in Serbia, because of course Serbia is a very important nation, but what the vision of these companies, global companies, is on region, as I said. So for Mexico, it's quite important that Serbia, the market of Serbia, is as well a platform to expand business in the Balkan region. So we need to understand these kind of different patterns that we need to promote, as well, as I said before, with the Serbian companies to get into the Mexican market that is 130 million. It's a huge market, but not only that, how the Serbian companies can project into the new NAFTA, for example, or in the Pacific trade agreement that we have with 11 countries, the CPTPP, and with the Latin American, the Pacific Alliance that comprise the economies of Peru, Colombia, Chile, and Mexico that are comprising 51% of the total export of Latin America are for these countries. So there is a network in which I would say there is a lot of potential for the Serbian companies to be engaged. But in order to do that, we need to have a clear diagnosis, which are the sectors in which we need to focus on.
Yes, we are currently building this mini Schengen area that is supposed to gather all 6 countries and territories that are not members of the European Union or any other economic bloc. Now we have 3 countries: North Macedonia, Albania, and Serbia, and we hope the other countries and territories will join. But also, I would like to ask you about, you said new NAFTA. We know that NAFTA had existed for some 20 years or so, And President Trump was a bit dissatisfied with that. He forced a new agreement. It's Mexico, Canada, United States economic agreement. Tell me, what is the difference the ordinary people don't really get? What's actually the difference between the NAFTA that existed prior to last year, I believe, and this new agreement? What really changed for Mexico?
Okay, well, this is a very good question. First of all, I would like to mention that when we started NAFTA in 1994, well, before NAFTA, the discussions inside of Mexico were very intense and very emotional, I would say, in some part, because, you know, well, there is a very nationalistic sentiment in Mexico. So I would say, you mentioned before that we have a lot of things in common with the Serbian people, and I think that the nationalist sentiment is one of those. Mexico is as well a very nationalistic country. And there were voices against to engage with the US economy. I would like to mention that the NAFTA was the first trade agreement in which one undeveloped country was participating with developing economies. Mexico was participating in this case with the United States and Canada. So those voices were in some part against to be engaged with the North American Free Trade Agreement, because mainly their arguments were in a sense that we will be absorbed by the US and the Canadian economy, so we are not going to be any other more than an economic colony of the US and Canada, and those kind of nationalistic sentiments coming, as you know, because of our history with the United States, now that has been with different events during the Mexico-US war. There is still in the mind of many Mexicans, half of our territory was lost in that war. So these kind of sentiments were precisely against to be engaged in this agreement. I would say that it was a very democratic discussion inside of Mexico, because on the other hand, you have the other vision. The other vision was, well, why don't we take advantage of being the neighbors of the most advanced economy in the world? Even though that there are risks, even though that, yes, it's going to be a challenge, but we need to take advantage of this. So it was really a very pragmatic view, a very modern view, and taking apart some of these emotional arguments, I would say, for a more rational and pragmatic view. So considering that, well, we engage with NAFTA, and it has a tremendous change for Mexico. For Mexico, it was the opportunity to engage not just on trade, but in develop our own economy and to expand to a more industrialized infrastructure. Now, because of NAFTA, we have where, for example, the first TV set producers in the world, the plasma and all the TV sets that you see around the world, many of those are made in Mexico. For example, where the second or the third producers of electrical appliances. Now, the electronic and electric sector has developed tremendously. In terms of the automotive sector, well, we develop as well a very important centers, not just to produce the cars of different brands around the world, that Mexico now is the first producer of light trucks in the world because of NAFTA. But this is not just the plan and to try to produce inside of Mexico all these kind of products. It's also some skilled workforce that have developed. Because of that, many of the design centers for these new products are in Mexico. So there are many Mexican engineers working in those fields that have developed these kind of capacities of the companies that are operated in Mexico. I would say that we need to look into this, not just in terms of the traditional view of the trade, to exchange and to send products. No, it is a wider process. I would say that this is how the world is precisely operating right now. And I would say that it would be a very interesting experience how we have evolved because of this kind of free trade agreements. In the case of Serbia, was that you are in a process to integrate to the European Union. So this kind of experiences, how you can engage in a global markets, how you can take advantage, not just to try to assemble things and to send to other markets. No, this is wider experience in terms of producing more high-tech knowledge, more human resources, skilled human resources that at the end is for the benefit of the country. So with that in mind, as you mentioned, it was the idea to terminate NAFTA, no, because of the previous president of the United States had that idea, and he was serious because it was a promise of his campaign, no. But once that he realized the importance of this infrastructure that we have developed, this integration of the three economies that are complementary economies that comprises the largest market in the world. And according with the numbers, well, in 2-3 years, there is going to represent the US, Mexico, Canada Free Trade Agreement that is called right now, UNCA. We represent 25% of the international world economy. So it reflects precisely how we have advanced in this. Having said this, I would mention that there is as well some kind of, let's say, misinformation or stereotype. Many countries, I had this conversation with our friends. I was ambassador of Mexico to Malaysia, and Malaysia at the time was engaging in this CPTPP, that this is one of the largest, is the comprehensive and progressive agreement from Trans-Pacific Partnership. And it comprises originally 12 countries, including the US. But the president of the US at that time decided to withdraw from that agreement and to attack precisely the NAFTA. You remember that? Yeah. Well, when I had this conversation, definitely I mentioned this experience that Mexico had. And this kind of CPTPP agreement now by 11 countries is precisely how the other element of a region that is evolving now in this structure of the 21st global economy. So in short, I would say that yes, it has been very important for Mexico. Nowadays, during the whole this 2021 year, Mexico has become and maintained the first trade partner of the US. This is really important because if you see the size of the economy, if you see the importance of the US economy, you might think that the European Union could be the first trade partner of the US or Japan or China. No, it's Mexico. And we have more than 650 billion US dollars of trade between the two countries. So in short, it represents really a very important tool for a development, the economic development of Mexico, not just economic development, but it affects as well, as I mentioned, other areas, how you prepare and how you have skilled workforce, how you can prepare all this kind of infrastructure in the different parts of the country, how you are not depending on raw materials to export, that it depends on the different prices, how you are taking advantage of receive high technology in your country to participate in the development of new technologies. There is a lot of advantages that we need to take into account, not just to mention, as I said, or just to circumscribe the issue of bilateral trade or sending the goods and receiving goods. This is a very extensive agreement that the last version of it's a new NAFTA in a way this was updated, because when the idea was before to update the NAFTA, because when the NAFTA was created, I want to mention there were not internet, there were not cellular phones, the car which serves the model for the rules of origin of the NAFTA was a car using a carburetor. Now there are no more carburetors in the car, so it was necessary precisely to update the NAFTA with the new reality and the new economy that we are facing right now. So I would say that, in short, it has been a very important tool for not just economic development of the country, but many other ways. I'm not mentioning, for example, the cultural impact of NAFTA, because when you are engaged in this kind of markets, you are receiving as well many other influences. You can promote your culture. I mean, it's wide extends this kind of experiments on not just trade. And these projects are very important, and for Mexico has been a tremendous tool for our development in general terms.
Yes, it's a great milestone for Serbia to see how to develop the economy further. I mean, we can learn a lot from you, because now lots of people maybe don't know, but because of NAFTA and dynamic economy, Mexico is a member of G20. As you said, it's not even the 20th. You said 16th, what is the position on the list of the most advanced economies?
Mexico is now the 15th largest economy.
15th,
yes.
Yes.
16th.
Yes, so it's a great idea for Serbia and for the countries of the region and Eastern Europe in general to see how to develop from the low tech labor industry into high tech, and to just climb the ladders.
Yes.
Now the fourth question is also about economy, but also about health. How Mexico is coping with the coronavirus pandemic, and what are the economic consequences, and how did you create a parachute for the companies and the economy to soften the fall, which is inevitable in 2020. In 2021 is going to be good, but 2020 was really tough.
Yes, you're right. I think that we cannot ignore the impact that has had, in many ways, the pandemic. Of course, in the sanitary level, there were not countries that was prepared for this. I think that it was clear, if you remember at the beginning, there were not even sufficient sanitary material for the hospitals and the health workers, and it was very complicated to have face masks, gloves, very elemental elements. You remember, many people maybe forgot that, but it means that precisely there were no preparation for this of any country. So Mexico had to confront this serious challenge. Of course, that a country of 130 million people with 2 million kilometers square of surface, it's a huge task. And we tried, as many other countries did at the beginning, try to have an emergency plan in order to attend all the people infected. But what I could say that we did good in some point of the pandemic was the procurement of the vaccines. We knew that the impact was very big in terms of our healthcare system. We had, unfortunately, many people dying because of the pandemic. And we knew that the only solution, immediate solution for this, was to have access to the vaccines. So far, Mexico is among the 10 countries which has more access to vaccines in the world. Today, I read the report, we are over 80 million doses. 80 million doses for a country of 130 million is very significant. Very good. We are in a process of vaccinated even younger people between 20 and 30 years. And we are doing a very good job in terms of vaccination process. As I said, it's a challenging task for Mexico because you have to the northern part that is a very desertic area, to the jungles in the southern part of Mexico. So it's not easy a process, but we are going well. We are hoping that eventually at the end of the year, we may have around 60-70% of the total population vaccinated. We continue having a different portfolio of vaccines. We were not focusing only one or two. Many countries, they decided to focus on one brand or two. We open up the opportunity for having as much as we can have in order to attend the 130 million of people that we need to
what types of vaccines do you use now? Chinese, American, British?
We have all of them. We have all of them. We have the AstraZeneca, the Pfizer, the Moderna, the Johnson. We have Sinovac, the Chinese. We have Sputnik. We have all of them because we think that we're convinced that this is the only way that you are going to have access and to cope with this challenge on the sanitary level. That's for a country of 130 million people.
Yeah,
This is the only way.
The only right way. The only right way, because lots of countries try to impose some political barriers. I don't want this. I don't want that. We're not going to approve, and it's very, very inhuman in a way. It's not a humane way to treat the pandemic, because the people are dying. The people are falling ill. They had serious consequences. The families are breaking up, rupturing. It's not a time to play political games. Yes. And I'm really, really satisfied that Mexico took approach that Serbia also took.
I would say that we need also to remember that all these vaccines are approved on an emergency basis.
Yes.
What does that mean? It means that all the vaccines that we have now have not completed all the processes that traditionally do in other vaccines, because it's an emergency situation. So this discussion about which is effective and which is not effective, sometimes I think that this is not in the right point, because as I said, all of those vaccines are in a process to consolidate the studies of all of them, because we are in an emergency context. So let's not forget that there is a difference with the previous vaccines that were tested, that were studied, that they were in a way following all the effects. We are in an emergency situation. That's why we decided to open up to all the possibility to access to the different brands. Yes. And in terms of the economic impact, of course, that Mexico has been seriously impacted because, for example, in terms of tourism, Mexico is the 6th most visited tourist destination in the world. Before the pandemic, we had more than 40 million tourists per year. So it was one of among the third or the fourth income of the country that has been seriously affected. So economically, well, we had to try to struggle with some kind of financial aid for some different sectors of the economy. Of course, there are our economy, it's a very diversified economy. It has been affected in different sectors. As I said, the tourist was one of the most affected. But as well, the other, for example, the industrial production, many of these industrial sites of Mexico are along the border with the US, and we tried to get vaccinated all the workers that are attending these kind of fabrics and these kind of industries along the Mexico-US border. We have had a very good job in that, so we're advancing with a very high of workers vaccinated in that part in order to reactivate precisely the industrial production of Mexico. And in a way, as I said, it's connected because the US, it's very impacted in a way that in Mexico is not producing some components that are used to produce other goods in the US and Canada. Well, we are trapped in that situation. So in terms of the financial aid, we are doing what we can do at our best is a challenge because the Mexican economy is not still a developed economy. We don't have all the resources to give subsidize many other sectors. But so far, I think that we are on the track to try to recover our economy. The projection of the Mexican economy to grow this year is around 5-6%. That is not so bad. I think that next year we're going to be able to mostly recover all the economic sectors that were affected for the pandemic.
Great news. And now some lighter topics. First of all, I would like to ask about the cultural relations between Serbia and Mexico. I know that Serbs adore Mexican culture in many ways. From simple things like food, everyone loves Mexican food, to dances, to films. Garcia Bernal is very popular. There are many things that we collaborate successfully, but can we do something more about that? What the embassy has in plans for the future?
Well, this is a very important subject for me. I'm convinced that only through a much better understanding of our societies, a much better knowledge of our own cultures, is going to be a key factor to promote many other contacts. I mean, in order to promote, for example, we were talking about economic opportunities that we have. But at the end of the day, if you are going to have a more trade between the two countries, what it helps a lot is a much better knowledge of the country in which you are having this kind of trade. And at the same time, while it's very important not just to learn the cultural elements that you want to use for marketing your own products, I think that this is quite important, and this is the connection perhaps that not many people know or don't see in the traditional cultural exchanges. I would say that this goes beyond to have this kind of art, food, literature exhibits. It goes beyond that because it's in a way to get contact and to get closer both societies. And in a way, once that in Mexico is much knowledge of the Serbian people, of the Serbian culture, of course that for the private sector in Mexico is going to be one point of attraction. And as well in Serbia. So as long as there is more knowledge about Mexico, the Mexican culture, and how we are integrated and a multicultural country, we are a multicultural country, So in that sense, it's connected as well with other kind of activities. But basically, what I would say that this is important as well, and we have done a very good job, I would say, in terms of promoting these social exchanges, because at the end of the day, what we have, the most important assets that we have is our people. And if we are not promoting a much better education of our people, if we are not providing them with some possibilities to learn other cultures, to interact with other creators, we are not promoting a social base of our relationship. And I would say that it proves the history of the relationship between Mexico and Serbia has proven that it works because of this strong social connection that we have on the intense cultural exchanges is how we survive in all these kind of different moments of our bilateral relationship. And because of that, now there is a big knowledge of Mexico here. For example, in terms of literature, we have made translation of many books to Serbian from very laureate and very well Mexicans, Nobel Prize of Literature. So we are still working on that. We are even thinking, we have an idea that we are exploring on having more base of creators, a base of Mexican and Serbian creators that could be taking advantage of modern technology platforms, and to create a base that they can be in contact, not through the governments, because at the end of the day, we are bureaucrats here working in a way. What is important for the embassy is that our creators in Mexico and the creators in Serbia maintain that kind of relationship. It doesn't matter about the official links that we may have or not, because it can be very intense political level, yes, but they should be completely independent. One of the main goals of the embassy during my mission here is try to create and establish this very important network of cooperation among the creators in different fields, in terms of literature, in terms of architecture, in terms of many other expressions, music, but we need to be able to build, taking advantage of the new technologies, this kind of infrastructure base where they are going to be connected and they are going to be able to continue having this different interaction among them. And having this in mind, well, I had some conversations with, for example, in terms of literature here, with the Hispanic associations of Serbians, Hispanic Association that is very strong. Mexico has promoted a lot of Spanish knowledge here, even through pop culture as telenovelas, for example. As you know, well, telenovelas, well, they are very well known here, and in a way, the Spanish that is spoken in those telenovelas is Mexican Spanish, in a way, Mexican Spanish, no?
Yes, true, it's true.
Exactly. So this is quite interesting that we want to continue expanding in that way. We are having some conversation, for example, with the museums here. We need to connect the museums in Mexico with the museums in Serbia, now in a new stage in which the Serbian cultural institutions are developing their own programs. No, we have some contacts before with the Yugoslavian institutions, but now we need to make an assessment where we can connect the dots in order to maintain and to enhance, for example, in terms of all the museums and all these kind of anthropology elements. Mexico has a very strong position in terms of anthropology, skilled persons that can contribute here. Serbia is now looking into the history specific of Serbia, try to work on that in this new era. So there are plenty of options that we want to continue. But the main goal, I would say in a short, the main goal for the embassy and for my mission here, as I mentioned, is try to create an independent infrastructure network in which can be completely by the own creators of both countries to maintain and to develop for the next years.
Thank you. You know, there is a common joke in the last, I don't know, 20 years, when someone talks something about the complicated relationships, you know, in emotional processes, you know, the other one just interrupts and says, "Okay, Televisa presenta." You know, it's always like, okay, now it's going to be some Mexican telenovela, you know, because we don't know what's happening, and there's a lot of misunderstandings. So everybody says, "Oh, okay, Televisa presenta." And also, I would like to invite you to club, my favorite club in Novi Sad. It's called Frida. Okay. I think the Frida is maybe the most popular name for the clubs and cafes and art cafeterias, you know, in Serbia. And I believe that every town, every city has one. We had two. Now the other one is renamed Diego, you know, because of Diego Rivera, you know, and now they rebranded themselves as, you know, because yes. Because they're kind of two sides of the same coin.
Yes, exactly.
Great. One more question about nice things is about the renewed interest of Serbian tourists for Mexico. I believe that your predecessor, my great friend, Ambassador Garcia Blanco, did something about visas. Just the process of getting visas for Serbian tourists is a little bit easier now than it had been in the past. Can you tell us what can we do to attract after the pandemic to attract more Serbian tourists to Mexico?
Well, this is a very good question. I think that it comes again with the parts of how we can get closer our knowledge among our societies, the different members of our societies, the different segments. And one important of these exchanges, of course, is tourism. Unfortunately, yes, there is a lot of interest of the Serbian people to visit Mexico. I would say that it comes from the Yugoslav times. At that time, I remember very well that one of the most important difference between Yugoslavia and the other Soviet republics was that Yugoslav can travel without any restrictions around the world. So there is really a tradition of the Serbs to go and to have adventures and to know other parts of the world. And yes, it's a very important, in terms of economics, I think it's a very important element. I was comment this with the Minister, Tatiana Matic, that she's in charge of tourism. And we were talking about not just how we can promote precisely the tourism between the two countries, but it's necessary in this pandemic context to make an assessment how we can confront both countries the challenge of managing tourism. So it's completely different right now, of course. And in a way, Mexico, as I said, we had a lot of experience. We have a very strong tourism industry. And we think that we have the opportunity to exchange some views with the Serbian authorities in terms of how we are managing tourism for a much better position for both countries. And we agree that we are going to explore that part. And on the issue of the visas, well, there are two very important elements. One is that as you mentioned, I review the process to expedite the visas. Now, there are not much waiting time because we're even making some remodeling in the embassy in order to have the consular section in other side to interact by themselves and not have complications. So we are expediting the process. So far, there shouldn't be any waiting time for a Serbian who wants to go to Mexico for more than 4 or 5 days. This should be the trend, and even we are trying to reduce that. But not only that, we have some conversation among the immigration authorities in Mexico in order precisely to take out the requirement of the visa for the Serbian nationals.
Yes.
So we are having those conversations inside of the government of Mexico. We are promoting this very strongly. And as you know, well, this decision depends on immigration authorities of Mexico because it's a general policy pretty much as here in Serbia. But I would say that we are on the right track. I would say that because of all these elements of friendship, of those elements of new collaboration, all these elements of academic exchange, all these interests to having more business contacts are pointing out to the decision of Mexico that soon, I hope, we are going to announce that situation. But in the meantime, I please ask all our Serbian friends to come and to visit Mexico. We're going to expedite the requirements of the visa. We have had work with the different tourist promoters here, agencies. So we are a constant dialogue how we can improve the process with taking in mind that we would like to have this very soon, this decision of not having visas to our Serbian friends. As you might understand, once that we are talking about this, there are other nations around the area that would like to have the same. But well, we need to look into the issue now, because there are different nations. Before was easy to deal these situations with one nation, but now we have to see with other different nations, and everybody wants the same, but we need to analyze first case by case basis, no, on case by case basis.
Great. One thing I remembered is that Serbian music, trumpet music, became very popular in Spain and very popular in Russia during the 21st century. And even Alex de la Iglesia, in his film El Crimen Perfecto, used lots of Serbian trumpets and Mexican, like brass music. And Mexicans have also this kind of strong tradition of brass music, and I believe that it could be a good export product for by Serbs to the Mexicans, because I think they would love it. And
Yes.
The last question is very easy. Before this show, I watched some Olympic Games events, basketball and tennis and everything. And what do you expect from the Mexican sportsmen in Tokyo, because it started a couple of days ago?
Well, I think that as many other countries, just to participate in the Olympics game, I think this is a very important hard work of our athletes. And even considering the pandemic, I think that you saw the inauguration ceremony, in which it was very emblematic how these athletes, they are training in closed doors, no? This guy who is training on the tracked running machine, instead of going out, no? So it has been a very challenging time for all the athletes in the world, and Mexicans have not been the exemption on this challenge. We are hoping that we may have at least good medals in the most traditional sports of Mexico. We are having some expectation in football, for example, although yesterday was not a very good performance by Mexican team that lost with the Japanese host team. But in gymnastics, maybe we have some chances. In Taekwondo, we're very strong as well. We have a history, and swimming, there is other possibilities. So we're hoping that we have a good development. The positive thing is that, fortunately, all these athletes, and I would say not just Mexican, and Serbians as well, they have had the opportunity to have the dream. I would say that it's the dream of life of many people that have dedicated their efforts, their lives, practically for that goal. And fortunately, while the Olympics are taking place right now, so I think that everybody's winning in this kind of situation.
Yes, very unfortunate situation, and no audience, so it's strange and quiet. But I hope they will give the best, and we will enjoy via TVs. Muchísimas gracias, Carlos.
On the contrary,
la próxima vez, espero.
On the contrary, thank you very much. Muchas gracias. I think that, congratulations. I think that this is a great opportunity, as I said, to interact with the Serbian public. Sometimes the ambassadors that we are not able to speak Serbian, we are limited not to have this kind of opportunities. So thank you for opening up the door and give us the opportunity to have this interaction.
Thank you for being my guest.
Thank you. Wow.